A few weeks ago, a content creator named Nakey Jakey made a fantastic video essay that detailed his time as a video game critic on YouTube over the past decade or so. It's a great video. Jakey always has a wonderful sense of style, and in that video specifically, he mentioned how he had this sort of sense of childlike wonderment from playing Hollow Knight Silksong. The feeling where your brain is pulled away from the objective perspective of the game and instead focused more on its experience and emotional core. And Ori and the Will of the Wisps was the last time that I really felt like that, despite, what shortcomings the title actually has. I still love and cherish that game because I am constantly in awe of how the audio design meshes with the jaw-dropping environments and unique, fun little character designs that you can encounter throughout its playtime. Every time that I get to the first introduction with Qualak, or hear the lilting tropical tunes of the Luma Pools, or, experience the first escape sequence, really, I am brought back to those simpler memories because my brain is turned into this wondrous, emotional mush. This is what I love video games for, and yet it is so hard for me to consistently translate those thoughts and experiences into paper without feeling like I'm walking down a checklist of, here's how this thing made me feel, like I'm going to a psychiatrist appointment or something. That's probably because I'm like a bad video essayist that can't communicate their thoughts clearly, but at the same time, it's because I'm too harsh on myself and equally too harsh on the media that I consume. It's also because of the way that I taught myself how to review content back in like 2014 to 2015, which was multi-page rants about multiple pieces of My Little Pony fanfiction, and I passed those rants off as reviews. I mean, I was 17, and I really didn't know better at the time, but that habit of defaulting to negativity has worked its way into the pieces of media and reviews that I create nowadays because of that foundation that I made for myself. And being negative all the time really does make you kind of hate the things that you're supposed to love. While we're on the topic, the last time that I really tried making reviews for fanfiction was under this group here on FimFiction, the Reviewers Cafe. As a lot of you might know, my username has undergone a handful of iterations due to different life circumstances leading me in a multitude of ways. Most recently, in December of 2024, I adopted the name May for myself and changed my username to reflect that when I felt I was ready. Prior to this, I was known as Sojourner Kai, since Kai relates to my legal name, and Sojourner was meant to reflect the fact that I've moved 25 times in my life. Before that, my username was Fox Likes Pancakes as an homage to my favorite animal at the time and my favorite breakfast food, leading us back to my original username, Black Denim Cap, which I adopted as an homage to my favorite hat that I was gifted during Christmas in 2013. I actually think I still have the hat. That one right there. That's the hat. I used to wear this all the time. I still have the old Google Docs with the original timestamps of almost all of the reviews that I made back then, alongside these Mystery Science Theater 3000 parody reviews that I did alongside a kind individual whom I only know as Key Strix. I haven't talked to Key in years on account of me deleting my original FimFiction account in the end of 2019, but I hope he's doing well. To prove this even further, there's a website called FimFetch that allows you to find any fanfiction that was posted to the website, irrespective of deletion or account status, and here we have this harmless little fan fiction that I wrote all those years ago. And if you do read it, I'd say read at your own risk, since I think I published this when I was like 16. The thing about FimFiction as a website is that when you delete your profile, it deletes everything associated with your account. Like anything that has touched your account gets sent to the stratosphere. So any replies to comments that you've made, any fanfictions you've written, any threads that you were a part of or that you had created are just completely nuked from orbit. And if you go to Keystrix's profile, which is still up on FimFiction, you can see that he has these links to these Mystery Science Theater 3000 parodies that we had made, but they go to dead links because I was the one who initially posted them. And so the unfortunate thing is that I can't go through like old accounts that I previously interacted with to find proof of a deleted message. It's just gone completely. The reason why I deleted my account, though, was because I didn't want to be associated with this brand of scathing negativity that I had grown to carve out for myself. I really just kind of hated everything that I ever interacted with, and a lot of it actually is because of this user here, Arctic Fox. Arctic Fox was the one who founded the Reviewers Cafe, even though the group currently shows Okamus Brony, also known as Willis, as the current founder and owner of the group. The Reviewers Cafe prided itself on being extremely harsh with its review ratings and that only the best of the best fan fictions would be allowed into its esteemed catalog. You know, the kind of self-importance of a snarky country club, but with My Little Pony fanfiction. In order to become a reviewer for the group, you had to submit a review that was up to their moderation team's quality standards. I made it in off of being unnecessarily scathing and mean. It felt good, really. You know, teenager, part of this elite group that nobody else can touch. You're part of like some special force that can decide what fan fictions make it in, if anything like really ever connects with you. I had the authority and final say whether a fanfiction made it into the group or not, and I tore a bunch of people's passion projects down and really disheartened a lot of individuals, all in the name of the search of elitism, basically. From what I remember, Willis was chill, as was this user known as Princess Dudette. But Arctic is one of the most self-aggrandized, narcissistic people that I have ever met. And it took me a couple of years as a teenager and eventually a young adult to realize that the man would rather lie and defend his identity than admit he is wrong. I distinctly remember, actually, there was like this time where we were in the Discord, Reviewers Cafe Discord, and for some reason we came onto the subject of like ancient Rome, as you do. He was talking about Nero, and I, you know, not really fully knowing the context, brought up, oh right, didn't the Great Fire of Rome, didn't Nero like blame that on the Christian community? Depending on like the historian that you ask, that's true, but we're not entirely like concrete on that. There are like different sources that say different things about it. But instead of taking that approach to it, Arctic just goes, no, he didn't. Like, okay. There's like no attempt at correcting or educating or anything like that. He just had to be right about this thing. He had to be better than everybody else in the group chat. It was a very, very interesting moment in history for me. And you can kind of tell that like rubbed me the wrong way by the fact that I'm bringing it up closer to a decade later. Like, this happened in 2019 at the soonest, so it would have been like, what, 6 years ago by now? But the reason I remember that was because in January of 2019, the administrators of the cafe decided that anyone could submit reviews now. You didn't need to make a submission or be peer reviewed by the admin team. You could just make reviews regardless of who you were. This was never discussed with any of the reviewers prior to its implementation, and it was never explained why they were doing this prior to the forum post. And as someone who had put time into being a reviewer, I was kind of miffed by this and pretty much stopped writing about fan fiction then and there, and then deleted my account months later because I just had nothing better to do on the website. I reinstated my account in 2021 with the goal of rereading some fanfics and even reviewing a few that were still floating around in the submissions box for the hell of it. And you could even see how the group had damn near daily forum activity leading up to January of 2019 before it sharply dropped off a cliff, with the last submitted thread being a lone review in September of 2019, exempting my threads in 2021, of course. The responses that Arctic gave in this thread announcing the format change were, and actually are because they're still presently available, extremely immature and self-centered. Instead of wanting to publicly host a discussion over the changes or take input from the community over why these changes weren't great, or even asking the community on what should be done in terms of actually trying to get reviews and get things into the cafe more often, he just doubled down, he insulted people, he deleted comments that were critical of his behavior and laughed at those people that he deleted. And the changes that, you know, people who were critical of the change they made, he removed them entirely. And he eventually locked the thread. So that's truly a personality that can be trusted to uphold the truth and not throw a hissy fit when someone tells him he's wrong. And around this time, I noticed a comment on the front page of the group that asked if the group was dead, and I pitched him my thoughts 4 years ago when I made those threads to give my perspective on what had happened. I won't read the whole thing out since it reiterates a lot of what I've already said here, but it was a comprehensive breakdown of the experience I had had with the group alongside my observations of its demise and shortcomings. Before I submitted this comment, I also remember peeking at the profiles of other people I had the most interaction with in the group to see if they were still active. Willis hadn't logged into his account for a few weeks at the time, though his last current activity shows him as online a month after I made my comment. Arctic has had this layout on his page for over 5 years now, and he hadn't signed into FimFiction for several months when I had posted this comment. And well, look who comes flying back in 7 months later in May of 2022 to say to go with the Occam's razor, even though there is demonstrable proof of him being a lying asshole who would rather brush people off than say he was wrong. The group died after this decision. The owner was, and probably still is, a complete complete jerk, and I'm tired of Arctic feeling like he's invincible to criticism. So fuck you, Arctic. You're a sack of shit. And I know that if I were to make a comment presenting this information, he'd either ban me or say that it didn't happen. Mostly because you just can't stand the feeling of being wrong. You've been offline for well over a year now, but if I were to come back and make a comment replying to this situation, you'd probably sign back in just to prove your innocence. Anyway, that feels good to get off my chest. But why am I telling you about all this 7-year-old beef on a fanfiction website in a video that's talking about how YouTubing has made me hate video games? It's to highlight where a lot of my reviewing history and perspectives have come from, that I was always encouraged to be mean and negative. As terrible as it is, this group very much shaped the foundations of how I would go on to write reviews for any media that I engage with from that point forward, from the perspective that a review isn't a proper review if it isn't dripping with venom. And I hate myself for that. Everything has flaws, so why not focus on those flaws was like the mantra that I approached a lot of my reviews for. And you can even see this in my old video essay channel where I talk about how I didn't like Glass Onion, or how I didn't like Danganronpa, or how I don't know, like anything in there is like I didn't like the new Star Wars trilogy. It's kind of like a low bar. All things considered, but it was never positive. And even in my video that I made about Ori and the Will of the Wisps, my favorite game, I still made it sound like I didn't like it because I'm so focused on the flaws instead of trying to capture in words how the game is so beautiful that it makes me cry. Do I think it's a perfect game? No. But that doesn't matter. What matters is, why do I love this game, and how can I convince you of my infatuation despite its flaws? And that's what I've been missing. I often pressure myself into writing scripts as quickly as possible, and when I end up writing as quickly as possible, I tend to fall back on those fundamentals of negativity because that's kind of what I know. It is doubly as easy to create negative content on YouTube since there are so many people out there seeking catharsis and external validation on something that they also didn't enjoy, or the other extreme, where audiences will see somebody have an outburst or outrageously separate opinion from the established norm and they cannot wait to join the hate watch train, which is pretty much entirely how grifters operate. And I have a really good example of this. If you guys were on the internet around the time that Starfield released, you'll probably remember this British individual screaming about pronouns. This is Heel vs. Babyface. Heel vs. Babyface isn't a particularly new channel, nor did it find its footing with his infamous Starfield rant. His most popular content on his channel presently is a smattering of World of Warcraft related videos from around a decade ago. Around the same time of the Starfield rant infamy, it would seem that Heel had leaned into what I would effectively call grifter content. Thumbnails and topics all centered around the most recent political controversy, usually American ones, which is weird for a British person to be addressing since these policies don't really affect him, but we are a pretty easy culture to rage bait. On average, these videos floated between 50 to 70,000 views, which is respectable, with the occasionally right-timed one breaking 6 digits. After the Starfield rant, though, for about a year and a half, most of his videos were consistently crossing 6-digit marks up until the last few months of 2025, where he's kind of back at the same numbers as before. This is why you need to stop. Hey, you, Twitter user, come here. This is why you need to stop engaging with and cross-posting transphobic content, because it only serves to give these people infamy. I probably point to his most recent thumbnail style as a contributing factor to how his channel is less visually appealing nowadays, but as far as his year in 2024 was concerned, he had made it pretty damn far, all off of negativity and current popular references. I'm jealous, honestly, and I can see those glimpses of success in similarly negative content that I've created as well. Since I've now dedicated my life to making YouTube content, I am even more pressured to write scripts for videos that I expect to perform. I am pressured to spend time on content or engaging with video games that I know that I can make a video on. And so I avoid a lot of titles that I would probably genuinely enjoy in favor of repeatable experiences, in those being like Dead by Daylight and Rainbow Six Siege. You know, these two are kind of like strange comfort games that I have really no business putting more time into. I'm like at 2,000 hours in Rainbow Six, I'm at 1,400 hours with Dead by Daylight. But because they are games that constantly reinvent themselves and happen to find themselves mired in some kind of controversy, they are the perfect foundation for endless rants and drama breakdown videos that will pretty much guarantee that they will always have an audience. After the, by my metrics, immense success of the 2025 retrospective video, thank you by the way, I uploaded 3 videos in the following week and change. One was a video that took me 3 days to stream and a few days to edit, while the other two were videos showcasing some of the fun that I can have in DBD and off-meta builds. The one that did the best was the video that I intentionally titled in an inflammatory way, which is really disappointing. I have plenty of reasons to be critical of Dead by Daylight, but I don't think you understand how draining it is to have to sit here in my broken office chair and write thousands of words about the new thing that I hate. And yet, since that's the only kind of topic that gets views, it's the approach that I have conditioned myself to have when playing video games. Therefore, whenever I do try something new, I'm always on the defensive because I'm looking for something to just sink my fangs into and rip to pieces. I tend to not play new games, not because I wouldn't enjoy them, but because I am genuinely worried that my mind would rather dwell on the negative stuff because I just have to turn everything into content, and content is negativity. So, does my title make sense now? Does all this pointless rambling show you the inner machinations of my psyche and explain why whenever somebody asks me, oh, what new video games have you enjoyed? I kind of freeze up because the only thing that I played from 2025 that was new was Arc Raiders, and I have buyer's regret from that game. Now, I know that the voice actors for Arc Raiders opted into offering their voices into a learning language model for use within the video game. That's not the point. The point is that Embark Studios never has to pay their voice actors again, and Arc Raiders' rampant success at the end of 2025 now sets a precedent for other game studios. You never have to pay a voice actor again if you can get them to sign a contract that buys their auditory likeness from now until the end of the game's life cycle. If the first person that they contact on their list refuses, then they can go to the next voice actor until they find someone who needs employment and is forced to take a role out of financial need. As someone who wants to be a voice actor, this prospect irritates me greatly because it completely disregards the reason we had the SAG-AFTRA strikes in 2023 to begin with. How do we expect employers to take voice acting seriously when we're allowing them to disrespect us so easily? In this respect, this is something that Arc Raiders can be criticized for, and is ultimately something that ruined my experience with the game. Comparatively, Ori and the Will of the Wisps has some flaws, but those flaws don't ruin the complete experience. I didn't really understand that until pretty recently, that it's better if I spend time talking about a piece of media, about how it connected with me, and dwelling on those opinions instead of fixating on the mistakes. So in short, YouTubing has made me hate video games, and I want to change that. There are so many incredible games that came out this year, and so many great games in my library that I should play that aren't called Dead by Daylight. For example, I have never played a Souls-like game, and yet I bought the Sekiro Shadows Die Twice Game of the Year edition because the combat looked interesting. I have done nothing with the game outside of watching the opening cutscene. One of the milestones of being a queer person is playing Fallout New Vegas. I got the game on sale a countless number of months ago, and I have still yet to install it, much less play it now. And fellas, if you haven't tried it yet, I highly recommend you play the Ori games. There are some story beats that might not fully make sense in the second game if you haven't played the first one, but to be honest, story isn't really all that important in these games. It's cute, but it's inconsequential. And I will say I vastly prefer Will of the Wisps to The Blind Forest because the sequel made a couple of significant positive changes to the overall gameplay experience. In The Blind Forest, the combat system basically comes down to you mashing one button while Sane automatically tracks to any of the enemy creatures on screen, while you have to mostly just focus with dodging with Ori. In Ori and the Will of the Wisps, they rework this and kind of give you an armory of weapons that you can work with, which then changes your combat style, how you dodge, and when you're allowed to get hits, making the weaving of combat versus the platforming a lot more satisfying in the second game compared to the first. Another thing that Will of the Wisps does better than The Blind Forest is that there are some locations in The Blind Forest that are just really hard on the eyes, and it's really hard to see Ori in some of these locations, and there's like a change of contrast overall in the second game that makes the game a lot more visible and a lot more palatable visually, and it just feels like a cleaner game overall because of this change. Now, I love Ori and the Will of the Wisps. It feels like I am playing the distilled essence of what makes people love the medium of video games as a confluence of multiple artistic efforts packaged together with relaxed and fluid gameplay. What really makes Will of the Wisps grab your attention at first is its incredible art style. Oh god, there's some acid reflux in that. What really makes Will of the Wisps grab your attention at first is its incredible art style that gives the Forest of Nguyen a sort of fantasy storybook appearance. Each location has its own color palette and choice of flora that makes them all feel unique, yet connected because of the visual consistency that it retains across the entire map. From the bright whites and true blues of Bar's Reach to the tropical pinks and teals of the Luma Pools, every last piece of this game is pure eye candy. Gareth Coker's mesmerizing soundtrack hosts a wide range of orchestral soundscapes, perfectly crafted to match the character or location that it introduces. When you first start the game, Ori is separated from their adoptive owlet sibling Ku, and the soundtrack in this first location plays a lone, sorrowful violin as Ori tries to get their bearings in Nguyen. This transitions into a beautiful oboe section complemented by a soothing piano segment, and then backed by what I understand to be a double bass and cello section. It's haunting and depressing, but still hopeful as Ori tries to find answers in this new segment of forest. Later down the line, Kolok is introduced with a deep, heavy, triumphant brass section as a way to display the character's immensity. In response to his introduction, the soundtrack plays Ori's motif with the choir and stringed instruments we've grown to associate with them, displaying their two-way conversation. Then, as we explore the marsh, Kolok's motif is played in combination with Ori's motif, and it pairs together with this wooden marimba and wooden wind section that plays throughout the entire first act, like they're working in tandem. It's so fucking cool what Gareth Coker does with the soundtrack in this game. This ever-evolving soundtrack that shifts and changes between characters and locations is practically seamless, giving way to a game whose presentation is nothing short of picturesque. And you can't have cool locations and music and still make a good game, though. There needs to be some actual gameplay to match with it, otherwise you just have Danganronpa. Thankfully, both Ori games fall into the Metroidvania category, which is to say that they are side-scrolling platformers with power-ups that you can gain by progressing through the game to gradually unlock locations that you couldn't access before. All played on a massive map with little secrets and treasures to find elsewhere. I like how you can unlock everything that you need fairly quickly, and that a lot of the base mechanics are often reused in creative ways to help Ori navigate around the map. There's actually very little backtracking. If there's any backtracking done, it's done within the confines of the section of the map that you're in, instead of having you do a section of the map and then you have to go across the map to get a different power-up and then come back to complete the rest of the game. There's none of that. It's very linear and straightforward. And once you get to the end of the first escape sequence, you are equipped with all the necessary base mechanics to make this little spirit just glide across the screen like butter across a hot cast iron pan. Just look at him go. This isn't without challenge, though, as the game will demand that you solve various simple puzzles and little platforming challenges to keep each location varied. The point of the puzzles isn't to be particularly challenging, and after the Wellspring Glades is cleared, the rest of the game does get pretty easy, save for some of the boss fights. I like the game being relatively easy to play because the fluidity in the platforming allows for Ori and the Will of the Wisps to be an ultimate comfort title. Once I get the rhythm down of slingshotting myself around the forest of Nguyen, the game becomes so soothing and enjoyable thanks to the other artistic elements that I mentioned before. It's not without its challenges, so I do need to stay sharp and attentive, but it is so satisfying on an artistic level that I can't help but continue loving it. And that's what I love video games for. It's not because they're all 10 out of 10s that will have Jeff creaming his Keeleys at the Game Awards every year, but because they are a representation of craftsmanship and artwork. They are experiences that you can never replicate in any other medium. Not all of them are going to be my cup of tea, and there will probably never be another game that combines a soothing audio-visual experience with buttery smooth platforming quite like Ori and the Will of the Wisps, and that's okay. I'll just be glad to have tried as many video games as I can. My reviews or opinions on Some of these games might not make it to YouTube though, and that's because YouTube has gone down a really weird slope in terms of gaming content. Most content relating to video games nowadays pretty much always has to be written in a negative light because it seems to be the only conversation most people want to hear. I understand the cathartic feeling of dogpiling on the failures of Concord or Days Gone, or the never-ending vat of video essay opportunities that are games from the PS3 or Xbox era, because, hey, do you remember this thing from your childhood? Well, here, let me explain it to you in a way that you don't remember it at all. That's a dig. It should not. I don't know. I'm gonna include that, but that's I'm hesitating to. So stop me if you heard this one before. I 100%ed Little Big Planet 2. It was, and you can never use a positive adjective here. It always has to be something arduous or painful or negative because YouTube audiences want to see you suffer.
Torture yourself for my entertainment, white person. Yes.
What am I doing, dude? That's a bit intense, but let's take Yako CMN for example. You can tell from his script in this video that he genuinely enjoys Hades 2, despite some baseline criticism about the difficulty that Supergiant undertook in creating their first ever sequel. Yet, in his thumbnail he has to show Melanoe in anguish and his title has to use a negative adjective. Hades 2 is a frustrating 10 out of 10, evokes conversation, or even baits people who will blindly defend anything into viewing the video. Hades 2 is immaculate, as a title wouldn't go as far, because you, as an audience member, are subconsciously expecting the video to be 56 minutes of overwhelming positivity. Hades 2 is overwhelming would even be a better title than calling it immaculate, and that's because being overwhelmed is a negative emotion, so you'd want to go put your peepers on the video and see what caused it to be so gosh darn overwhelming. This is what caused me to freeze up when it came to playing video games, that if I want to make a video on them, I have to relay a negative experience. Or do I? See, the funny thing about YouTube is that we do this thing called clickbaiting. It's a classic. Everyone hates it when they figure out that they've fallen for it. The reason why we do this is genuinely because a video title and thumbnail determines whether a video lives or dies in the algorithm. I've been reiterating a lot from what I said earlier, but like repackaging it in here. But I think that the videos that I have that do well are the ones with the best and most recognizable thumbnails. The Giga-chan theme is universally recognizable. I'm a fan of the editing on this one, and putting P100 in a video title and thumbnail on occasion has the opportunity to get people's attention. The ones that go nuclear are the super negative, cynical, and extremely simple titles and thumbnails. So why am I telling you all of this? Like, genuinely, why does any of this matter? Why can't I stay on topic? I'm right like a normal person. Look, I have severe ADHD, and this is kind of like the line of thinking that makes the most sense to me. This is a very personal video. I mean, you can even see it from the fact that I'm using Facecam. I don't do this at all. It might seem disorganized, because it is, but I wanted to keep it this way because it felt like a much better way of doing this heart-to-heart conversation. Talking about a genuine feeling is a lot easier to do when you're in front of a webcam than if you're behind some crazy cat avatar. After I made the statement in my video about how 2025 was a rough year for Dead by Daylight, that I didn't want to continue making negative videos, this is what I meant. I'll still be critical where I need to be, but I don't want my bias towards negativity to get in the way of explaining or even finding new personal experiences. It felt fitting after a year of resounding success on Twitch and YouTube to wrap it all up with this New Year's resolution of sorts, to talk about what I want to do better in the new year. You probably won't see any more face cam videos like this. I just kind of felt like it fit the format the best, but genuinely from me, thank you for an amazing 2025. I didn't think I was going to make it this far at all. We hit 10,000 subscribers earlier this year, and I was like, oh, you know, what if we hit 10,000 by the end of the year? That'd be kind of cool, wouldn't it? And we're basically like almost double there. And that's like, I don't know how else to express this aside from saying thank you. It's just wild to think about that there are towns that I have lived in that have smaller populations than the people that are subscribed to my channel right now. That's incredible. And I know it's like such a classic, like, hey, you know, I love your city, like a concert. a person hosting a concert to be like, I love Portland. I'm rambling. But genuinely, like, I could not have made it this far without support from you all. And even if this video doesn't, like, do particularly well in the algorithm, I just feel good about getting my thoughts out there. So, once again, thank you very much for an incredible 2025. Here's to, hopefully, an even better 2026. With that all out of the way, thank you so much. Safe travels, Happy New Year, and goodbye.